Support for Digging Deeper comes from the Penn State Alumni Association, connecting alumni to the university and to each other. The Alumni Association is powered by pride. Learn more at alumni.psu.edu. And from viewers like you, thank you.
Hi, I'm Robert Johnson. Greek life is a prominent part of campus life at many American universities. Following the tragic deaths of several students at different universities across the nation in 2017, Greek life has been the target of reform efforts. Most have centered on eliminating hazing and returning Greek organizations to their service and scholastic roots. Since the death of Tim Piazza in a hazing-related incident in 2017, Penn State has been a leader in Greek life reform efforts. In this episode of Digging Deeper, Penn State President Barron talks to Ezra Gershnock, Kenny Casals, and Darren Shook, 3 current Penn State students involved in Greek life.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. Incredibly important topic. I have this feeling, though, that people think of Greek life as being one thing. And my suspicion is that they don't know that your Greek life experience is very different. I think everybody imagines a house somewhere off campus, but maybe each of you could say what your Greek life experience is.
Yeah, well, for me, I joined as a sophomore, and I decided to do an associate chapter, so it's a smaller chapter, and you have a focus in something, so ours is service, and I was involved in service throughout high school, so it seemed like a good fit, and for me, like, having that smaller bond was more important than a bigger one. So I think not a lot of people know that there are different types of sororities and they're not all like exactly the same. Yeah.
Do you live together?
I lived with some people who are in my sorority off campus, but we have a floor just like everyone else that people live on.
A floor in a residence hall?
Yes.
Yes. Ezra?
So I think that my Greek experience might be more similar to what the stereotype is. We have a house off campus. It's about around 100 brothers. 50 of them live within the house, and I think that it could carry some of those stereotypes that people would assume that are associated with Greek life. But specifically, why I joined my fraternity was that I knew a lot of the brothers coming into Penn State from being, in the Jewish community. Some of them were around Pittsburgh, some from Philly. And it was a really nice way to make this huge campus seem smaller, a way to feel like there was always a place for me. And it always stuck with me, this idea that when kids leave home, they immediately come to this big school and whatever else, and then they look for a new family. And I mean, you could call that this new form of brotherhood and then the new house. So it's really interesting to me to see that transition. But yeah, I would say that mine is more similar to what a typical Greek experience might be.
Kenny?
I could relate more to Darren, being that my fraternity is a smaller one. There's only 7 undergraduate brothers and only 21 brothers in the entire chapter since it was started in 2011 at Penn State. And in '79, when the organization was first started, it was started by these 20 Latino men at Rutgers University, just trying to make a change on campus. At that time specifically, trying to empower Latino men or Latinos on campus. And like we're just here today trying to make that same movement at the Zikari chapter at Penn State.
And do you have a place?
Not necessarily. I live with 3 of my brothers, but it's not like a house for the fraternity.
So now, one of the interesting things about all of the discussion and dynamic out there in the world is that that things have changed dramatically in the sense that being a participant in Greek life meant better grades. And there are a couple of articles out just in the last week that this is no longer true, and that this was a chance to network and had an impact on your future in terms of leadership roles that you might play. Is that still, do you feel that a lot of that press is inappropriate? Do you have that sense that you're building leadership skills and you're creating a network and this is creating opportunity for the future?
I mean, I think it is because I never thought of myself as having a leadership role. I was kind of more shy and in the background, but I think being in a sorority, they gave me the support to like take on that role. And even from being here and being able to be on this show, I don't think I would have had that opportunity if I didn't go through my leadership process.
I think that the experience that I've seen of being involved in my fraternity and then being on the executive board is I was just so surprised at how much responsibility is vested into 19 and 20-year-old guys. And I'm sure it's the same for girls in sororities. But we have brothers managing budgets exceeding $100,000. We have other brothers managing hundreds of people on different nights, coordinating philanthropy events with local police, with local animal rescue shelters, things that I didn't think that a 19, 20-year-old would be capable of. I think with that huge amount of responsibility comes a lot of room for mistakes to be made. And so you could kind of get into that whole conversation of like how much power is given to these kids. But what I do notice is that it can mature people and make people into more of an adult and ideally into a better man when you're referring to a fraternity.
In organizations like mine and other organizations within the Multicultural Greek Council, with numbers as small as 3 to maybe 11 members, having a leadership position is almost inevitable. Last year, when there were only 2 undergraduate brothers on campus, they have to hold multiple leadership positions. Someone acting as president and secretary and the other as vice president and treasurer. Being that I just crossed last spring and I'm now the president, I wanted to take on this leadership role because I thought I could do a lot for my chapter, but also because just our numbers are so small that there weren't many who stepped up to take the position.
So, I mean, this is the good part of the story because you chose the organizations to help make a big university feel smaller and to have a group of people that you wanted to interact and socialize with. There are leadership opportunities that are there. You sound like you're going to be proud to be able to put some of this on your resume. I was president of this organization. And now we flip this to the fact that across the country we've had numerous deaths, that we've had activity after activity for which individuals are going to emergency rooms with alcohol poisoning or some other particular issue. Way too many, and even one death, and ours was a death that was videotaped, for which the individual could have been helped. And an institution like ours, for which we have to promote the safety of the student, creates all sorts of new rules. Everything from self-governance, not there in the same way, monitors, number of parties changing, size of parties changing, a changing of the recruitment process, a changement of the educational level, a new law that makes hazing that involves severe damage to someone a felony with a prison term associated with it. Give your thoughts on what of that is going to work and what isn't going to work. Why don't we start there? Maybe Ezra, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, I think that the most important part of the reforms since the tragedy last year, maybe a year and a half ago, is that it sends a signal that times are changing and that expectations have changed. And I think that that signal has been heard. However, I notice that there's a really destructive tendency happening where the university and fraternities are not building trust. where fraternities they feel like they're under the microscope to the point that when they do things that aren't intending harm in any way, they're getting punished. And I just think that it's at the advantage of both fraternities and the university to create this like coexistence and this cooperative relationship. And so I feel that the signal has been heard, and that at this point moving forward, the fraternities that are left that haven't been kicked off and the fraternities that want to make a change should try to find a middle ground with the university to be able to be that better fraternity and then be a light unto other campuses around the world, because I think, or other campuses around this nation, because I think a lot of schools are looking to Penn State to see where 21st century fraternities are going to go. I have a lot of different ins and outs of that, but I think at the end of the day, if that's the priority, is to bring the university and the fraternities' interests together, then I think that you'll see a sustainable Greek life.
So your thought is the universities come and hit this with a sledgehammer.
Yeah.
And it's time to sit there and also reestablish a different kind of working relationship.
And there have been some unintended consequences of these really good intentions that the universities showed. One of those unintended consequences that I'll go into is deferred rush. So deferred rush is good because it lets freshmen meet other people and get acquainted to the campus before they feel obligated to rush a fraternity. But it also has impacted a lot of different fraternities financially because they have a really tough time filling the house with leases. And secondly, it's created this situation where people that then join a fraternity already have a group of friends. And so by the time they come into the fraternity, they're trying to bring their friends that aren't in that fraternity into the house. And that's a safety. It's a
changing the scope of brotherhood.
Exactly.
Because it's now a mixture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And of course, the intent was to make sure you had friends and saw other opportunities so that when you went into a house, if there was severe hazing, you'd walk away. You're more likely to walk away. But yes, it takes time to work through these things and decide what works and what doesn't work. Now, Kenny, you're in a case where all these rules appeared, and yet you're not living in a house, and you're not having a block party, and you're not. And so, what do all those rules and regulations mean for you? It doesn't matter, or it had a significant impact?
So I wouldn't say that it didn't matter or that it doesn't matter, because Estra actually brings up a really good point about deferred rush. Now, although we don't have a house and we don't have registered, or we don't have socials that we have to register, but as far as deferred rush, those numbers in the fall, or incoming freshmen not being able to pledge in the fall hurts our numbers because we are so small. By the time the spring comes around, if they are interested in the fall, because there's such a strong influence from IFC, that they may become influenced by them and kind of distance themselves from MGC. So I know a lot of organizations within the MGC are having a hard time keeping their numbers and keeping the interests of potential members.
Say what MGC is for everybody.
The Multicultural Greek Council.
Yep, okay.
Yeah, so as far as the other regulations that were implemented after the death of Tim Piazza, they haven't really had too much of an impact on the other organizations within MGC, but that deferred rush is definitely something that has hurt more so than has done good.
Mm-hmm. And you have educational responsibilities too. So
Yeah.
how did things change for you, and what seems to work and what doesn't?
So I think overall the education that was brought into it for the new members having to go to that hazing and the alcohol seminars, I think that was really helpful, because a lot of my new members, when I saw them coming into it, because of all the negativity around Greek life, they were almost nervous and were thinking about stereotypes. So I had them all on a piece of paper write down one goal you have and one fear you have. and then they turned them into me, and a lot of it was like looking at the stereotypes and things they thought were going to happen. And so we had to reassure them that this isn't what we're like, and we're on the path to wanting to make things safer. So I think the education programs are really beneficial to them. But at the same time, the transition and having to do all these new requirements and fill out all these forms as a new VP of membership development, it was confusing at times. And sometimes I was worried I wasn't doing the right thing. But working with our panhandle director kind of helped sort that out. But it was a hard transition, I would say.
Yeah. So some issues that you're worried about. Is some element that of part of the reforms you said, okay, that does work? That has had a positive impact?
Yeah. Hard alcohol.
Hard alcohol.
Yes. The limit on hard alcohol has really, and this is after speaking to IFC President John Lord.
Yeah.
And he echoed this to me, and then I thought about it for a while. And the fact that hard alcohol isn't just readily available at socials anymore has really changed a lot of the very negative effects, externalities of fraternities.
What about the size of the parties?
So the size of the parties has actually been an issue, I think, with the reforms. Because there's only 10 socials now, and there's 15 weeks in each semester, each fraternity, when they used to have 2 or 3 parties a week at least, is now having one every other week or 2 every 3 weeks.
This doesn't sound bad to me.
I hear you.
Yeah.
But it creates the situation where only 3 or 4 houses are having a party on a given night, and so many people are trying to get in. And there's like this whole mob of people outside, and the entire inside of the house is packed. And that's just a safety issue as far as like if people are trying to leave and there's too many people in the doorway.
And if you coordinated the parties, would this change that dynamic?
So I can't speak for other houses, but our houses run what we call risk, and risk is pretty rigid. We have like risk chair and then other positions of different people that are in charge, and they all have walkie-talkies and they all coordinate who's in and who's out. So I think that we're relatively more organized than other places, but one of the biggest issues is people all outside of the house trying to get in. And then we have to call up cops, and then we get a house complaint and borough points for us just because these people
If
don't
you
have
call the
anywhere else to
police,
go.
you get borough points?
So our neighbors, so we'll call the police to get them off our lawn, but neighbors or different other houses around us will call and we'll get a noise complaint just because all these other people don't have anywhere else to go. So in some ways we're between a rock and a hard place, but like I said, I think the elimination of hard alcohol is really needed and has made a good impact.
Are any of you seeing a change in who's deciding to go into Greek life because of the national press and the Penn State press? Fewer people or different types of people?
I would say we've had fewer people come out, like not as heavy rush. I don't know if that's because people are making other friends and getting involved in other places, but I know commitment is a little harder because when they do come in, they're already involved in all these clubs and they do have meetings that they need to go to, so obviously they have to split their time, which can kind of be hard when you're first starting out and you're trying to get to know all the people in the sorority and you're trying to be involved in all these different things.
Different numbers? Different type of person?
Our numbers have still been pretty strong, but I think that we still have room to improve in terms of the type of people rushing Greek life. I spoke with the former president of my house, and he advocated for all rush to be in the hub, not in the houses. And that would be a way to really get to know people outside of that social setting. I think still to this day, too many people join fraternities just to party. I think that that's just a reality that we have to admit. And if you get people where their first priority was brotherhood and their first priority was creating a community, then I think that you'd start to see more profound changes, and that starts with the rush process. So I agree with my former president. I think that rush should be taken out of the houses. Like I said, I just think we have room to improve there.
Yeah.
I haven't really seen like much change in like the numbers or the audience that we're reaching. I think that people that are interested in MGC organizations are a different crowd to begin with. I think if someone's looking into more of like a social aspect of brotherhood, then there are those IFC fraternities. that can cater to them. Because like you said, you know, you see like a lot of people joining fraternities just for the parties. But
Is bad behavior going underground?
Yes.
So that, you know, here are the rules, but there are groups that don't care. They're going to find a way to do it no matter what.
Yeah, and I think that just creates a danger for everyone else, because that puts us in a bad position when we're trying to uphold all these rules and there are other people who just don't care about them.
Mm-hmm. Yes?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest problems is that there aren't enough alternatives to fraternity parties.
Yeah.
At other schools, there's clubs, there's 18 and up clubs, or just like that sort of scene. At our school, there isn't until you're 21, and that kind of creates this monopoly on going out.
Yeah.
That fraternities have. So I would say that yes, there are some people that are really dedicated to change and they want to see a better Greek life that's more sustainable. And there's people that understand that Greek life needs to change if we want to see it around for our sons and
So I really wish I had more time to ask more questions and hear your thoughts. Unfortunately, I don't. But just as one, what will Greek life look like in 10 years in 1 or 2 words?
I'm hoping more inclusive and safe, I would say.
I think Greek life will look much more like we want it to. I think it'll look much more transparent. There'll be traditions that won't change, but I think that you won't have to worry about your son's safety when you send them to school.
Kenny?
I think with the proper reform, it could be revolutionary.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to come and share your thoughts. I appreciate it a great deal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Barron, thank you so much for joining me on what a quite interesting conversation you just had.
It is. I think I could have spent a lot of time talking with those students about their perspective.
Absolutely. So what do you think is one of the biggest misconceptions of Greek life at Penn State?
Well, one of the misconceptions is it isn't one thing. It really is sometimes men in houses, sometimes groups that are gathered together because of their culture and don't have a house, to a sorority that may have a floor on a residence hall, but people are living all around the university. Some very oriented towards service, some less so, some oriented towards philanthropy, some less so. And so it really is, it's not one thing, not one behavioral entity either.
So off of that point, during the past year, how have you seen Greek life change after all these reforms have taken place?
So there's a lot of different levels of this. So there's the example that the crime rate in the borough has plummeted in a lot of ways, in many different, in many of the different categories, down 25–30% in some cases. So we know that that's very impactful, and we're getting letters from community members saying just how much more livable the borough of State College is. So that's one kind of element. We've seen a change in the number of sexual assaults, for example. That's incredibly important. We've also seen cases where people go, well, I don't think we're going to be caught, and I want a party, and that's why I joined this particular group, and I'm going to find a way to do it. So many people think that it's a whole spectrum of those that are leading a new generation of Greek life and those who don't want to.
And you mentioned, and you asked the question earlier, is there bad behavior going underground? And that's also an important question to ask and see what's happening in the community.
Well, this is a national story, and many other universities are describing how they're discovering underground activity that is quite negative because they are working to enforce certain behavioral norms. So it's a reality in some cases.
So Ezra, one of the guests earlier today, he said this phrase, universities and fraternities are not building trust. How can universities and fraternities build better trust to work together more cohesively?
So many people don't realize that we had a task force that tried to put university community and Greek life together in the same room and come up with with a set of recommendations, and they struggled and didn't get very far. And some people wanted it stricter, some less strict, and then something awful happened, and the university stepped in and just said, okay, enough of this discussion. These are the things we're going to do based on scholarship in this area. Well, we took them out of the decision-making process, and we really do have to couple this back again and see what we can do better in order to build that level of trust. But having someone die because of the notion of brotherhood is just unacceptable, and we just can't afford. We just can't afford that, not for a family member, not for the university, not for anybody. So we have to be tough, but we can be better too.
And lastly, looking forward, what's one thing you want to change about Greek life?
I really, to tell you the truth, it's not one thing I want to change. It's the hope that we have young men and women that step up to the leadership that is a key part of Greek life, and they become the real change agent. That's more important than the rules we're making.
Thank you so much, Dr. Barron.
Thank you.
Support for Digging Deeper comes from the Penn State Alumni Association, connecting alumni to the university and to each other. The Alumni Association is powered by pride. Learn more at alumni.psu.edu. And from viewers like you, thank you.